Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of Drunk Bible Study Bonus Edition, episode 136, the bonus one about
the
that
bonus
episode.
one. Guess what? We had a new segment this week. That was cool. We're not going to talk about it, though. We'll talk about it in the abstract, but not like, I don't know what happened in it. It just was some
silly
psalms.
We could talk about it. I mean, actually, you know what? That's not a bad idea. That maybe in the bonuses we could unpack the Psalms a little bit that we read in the episode. We did not prepare for that today, but in the future, that sounds like a great idea.
Except for Dedeker, I do want to ask, because you told me that you ended up having to memorize the first psalm, the very first one that I said.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like?
The first one that you ever said.
Yeah, what was that like?
First one that
like
anyone has ever
it?
said. No, why did you memorize it?
Why did you have to memorize it, and what were you like, wow, I feel so good? Or were you just like, I have to memorize something?
Like, memorizing Bible verses was always my least favorite part of going to Christian school or Sunday school, because it was just never fun. You know, it's like as a child, you don't have that much of a connection to the text. And it's not like math, like memorizing a math equation where it's like, you got to use this, you know, to figure things out. Like, it was literally just about like rote memorization, just like memorize this so we can test you on it. And
Did
then
you
be
feel
done
the
with it.
same about memorizing other things like, I don't know, the Declaration of Independence or the...
No. I would do speech contests where you would memorize like speeches and poems and stuff like that. And I loved that. I absolutely loved that.
So that's weird, because I would have thought you would have been into this memorizing thing, because you're so good at memorizing stuff.
Yeah,
I would have
could
thought
do
you would have
it.
been into it.
I could do it, but I did not enjoy it.
Huh.
No,
Wow.
Bible class was always just like a bummer and like way more boring than other subjects for me.
Fascinating.
That's too bad.
But I guess I was mostly caught by surprise, because as soon as I started like reading it before we recorded, I was like, oh crap, like this one is still in there somewhere inside me. Like it brought back memories of memorizing it.
I wrote a song that the words were a psalm once years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Back when I was in high school, maybe? Yeah, high school age.
Look at you go.
Wrote a song, yeah. When we get there, I'll probably be like, I'll have that same moment of like, oh yeah, this is the one that I wrote that song about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I don't think I have a recording of that. That would be a wild thing
Dang.
to dig up. Gosh.
I mean, you've dug up some really intense stuff before for this show.
Yeah. So that's, anything's possible. Anything's possible. I wanted to look up this thing about the pleasant plants and strange slips.
Yes,
like,
please.
Yeah, what's that?
What is this? So, okay. First of all, slips. I was like, what the heck does slips mean? And I looked that up, just, sort of plain old dictionary look 'em ups. And what I found is that there is an alternate word, slip, that means a cutting taken from a plant or a grafting of a plant. You know how we'll have words that are, homonyms and homophones in English, right? Like slip. It means, it's one word, and we have a verb form and a noun form of it that's like to slip on something, to fall down, or to like slip out unnoticed, or the noun form of those.
Sure.
And then there's a different slip that comes from a slightly different origin word, etymologically speaking. And that slip is the one where we get this cutting from a plant, and is also where we get a slip of paper, which makes sense because it's like a small cutting
of a plant.
Yeah. So anyway, so those two words are maybe related, but are not like derived from the same word. So that's kind of fun trivia for those of you out there. Anyway, so strange slips. Okay, so that was step one. Is it just means like a cutting of a plant, or you could think of it as like a seed of a plant, although technically a cutting. And strange slips. So when I looked into this and different translations and commentaries on the Bible and stuff like that, it translates, some of them just talk about it as like foreign seeds, like exotic plants from elsewhere. Because remember, this is part of his condemnation of people who plant these plants for their fertility rituals and stuff to other gods that are not Yahweh. But this was the one I thought was the most interesting. This is from the Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges. They talk about
Cambridge.
Yeah. This "thou shalt plant pleasant plants" from the King James Bible.
Very pleasant.
Apparently another translation of this is "thou plantest plantings of Adonis."
Oh my.
Yeah. So this led down a rabbit hole of this referring to Adonis gardens, which are mentioned by Greek writers such as Plato. And what they describe it as in the Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges is pots of quickly withering flowers, which the ancients used to set at their doors or in the courts of temples. And then, so I was like, okay, what's an Adonis garden really? And this led me down another rabbit hole. It's now we're third level deep here.
The Adonis path.
So it led me to a couple things. One is that maybe this was a term for just pots that people would place outside of their houses or whatever. But what came up when I was looking for it was this festival that took place in Athens, supposedly at some point. Different writers contradict each other on when it happened, but it seems like 400s-ish BC. And where we are now in Isaiah is like 600s, maybe 700s, right? Like somewhere in that range. So that would have been quite a bit after, but this also may have been written down after, so maybe that translation fits, you know. Maybe it was kind of like...
Jace, you're really bearing the lead. Yeah, like, this festival's just all about sex, right?
Okay.
Obviously.
So there was this festival. I can only assume it was about sex. I know that Adonis was a god who was worshipped in Assyria specifically, possibly even came from Assyria. That like the Adonis we know of from Greek mythology or whatever may have actually been originally an Assyrian figure that kind of got brought into Greek mythology. That part I'm not as sure about, but I did learn that it was a worship primarily practiced by women, which was interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course.
But so the festival had this thing called the Gardens of Adonis, and they were pieces of terracotta that had plants planted in them. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, lettuce and fennel, specifically the exotic plant.
Lettuce?
A nice salad.
Lettuce and fennel?
And fennel, yes. But the deal was, though, that these seeds sprouted, but then they soon wilted and died afterward. And some scholars say it's because it was in the heat of summer, but others are like, no, actually, this festival was in spring, and it's because these pots are very shallow, so they couldn't ever take root. So it's possible that either the original writers or the translators at some point were kind of making this diss about your foreign plants for your fertility rites wilting because they're in these like shallow pots where they can't take root.
God, that's
so many levels.
That's many levels to go through to throw a little bit of shade.
Well, you know what? I thought about it, though.
God works in mysterious ways.
Also, translators do. And it made me think that at some point, these translators of like a much earlier translation into Greek, for example, may have been pulling a little bit of the Eugene Peterson. And in the same way that he talks about cruise liners and skyscrapers, maybe they threw in this reference to Adonis gardens, which wouldn't have happened for a few hundred years afterward, but maybe was a sort of a known thing if Plato wrote about it, right?
Wow.
So there's Eugenes upon Eugenes is what we're talking about here.
I've learned so much.
So much. Well, I learned about raisins. Raisins are cool. I just...
Slightly less sexy.
So, yeah, in Isaiah, and maybe more sexy, I don't know. In Isaiah 16:7, which is something that Dedeker read, this is translated from, I don't know, probably the King James Bible, but it says, "Therefore the Moabites wail. They wail together for Moab, lament and grieve for the raisin cakes of Kir Harsheth."
Yes.
Kir Harsheth. So this is from reasonforhope.com, and it's hysterical.
Wait, was that Reason for Hope or Raisin for Hope?
Reason. The reason for hope, but maybe it's the raisin in this specific thing.
And the raisin is yo.
Ugh. Yeah. Who wrote
I found a raisin for me.
Was that
a raisin
to be?
Was that their only hit? That was their
a raisin
to
start over new. And the raisin is yo.
Yeah. Okay.
That was Hoopastank.
All right. So listen to this. 8 times in the Bible, raisin cakes are mentioned. Oh. They were basically, get ready for this, a fruitcake-like delicacy.
Well,
dried grapes were pressed together almost like a power bar. The raisin cakes depict prosperity and good times. They were offered as a peace offering, but other times used in pagan rituals.
Oh, boy.
Double whammy there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going over now to corechristianity.com, where somebody talks about the strange case of the forbidden raisin cakes in Hosea 3, which we haven't at all gotten to. But essentially they talk about all the places that raisins are discussed, including in Samuel, in Chronicles. Did we do Chronicles yet?
Yes. Wait, no.
That's the one that we would have done, but we did Isaiah instead. We'll do Chronicles
kind of
at the
have
end.
done it, but not quite.
Not really.
And then, of course, Isaiah. So, okay, so they're a big problem in Hosea 3. So essentially, I don't want to give anything away, but it says to love raisin cakes means to love worshiping at other altars, to turn away entirely, explicitly from the Lord, just as Gomer not only rejects her husband, but also seeks out other lovers. That,
okay, so
I guess
right.
is gonna happen
here,
later.
Raisin cakes are associated with being pagan or heathen or worshiping other gods than Yahweh.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Okay, so
it says, loving raisin cakes may seem like a weirdly specific and harmless thing to condemn, but we need to look past the dried fruit itself and think about what it signifies. It signifies distraction, complacency, self-centeredness, pride, and a willful rejection of the providing hand. The Israelites are guilty of all that, and yet they are the people whom the Lord loves.
Well, the Lord's going to be sad because I could really go for some raisins right now. Specifically Turkish raisins. When I was living in Turkey, like their raisins over there, their sultanas are just like so good. There's something about it.
They like big raisins?
They're like big and like juicier than our raisins in the States, and just like, oh, so good. I could eat a billion of them.
Well, apparently it's a power bar in the Bible.
An ancient
power bar.
Someone in the chat during our episode said something about fruitcakes being very popular a few decades ago because of how alcoholic they were. And I was like,
make
wait,
a boozy fruit
what?
Cake.
I did not know that fruitcake was alcoholic. But maybe that's also...
fermented the heck out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You can make a good boozy fruitcake if you really want to.
Sure.
I do want to.
Well, great. Next Christmas, let's do it. We'll make a boozy fruitcake. You're my boozy fruitcake. I'm going to talk to you about inward parts.
Oh,
but you are.
Boy. Okay.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I don't have anything as interesting as I thought that we might.
Really?
Well, the first place I stopped is I ended up on a site, newchristianbiblestudy.org, where when I typed in this particular verse, it brought up like every single translation, including international translations. So as in like the Korean translation and the Portuguese translation. And so I looked at the Japanese translation because I'm like, I wonder what they said for this word. And for the Japanese translation, so the original verse is in the World English Bible. It's therefore my heart sounds like a harp for Moab and my inward parts for Kir Heres. And then in the Japanese translation, they kind of flipped it where they actually used the word soul, that it was like my soul that was sounding for Moab and that my heart was like in pain for Kir Heres. So they chose soul and heart. Of course, as people in the chat pointed out, heart is originally bowels because that's where people thought the seat of emotions were. I also ended up on Bible Hub in their commentary, where it was actually cool is they kind of broke it down by all of literally the Hebrew words. And so I went down a rabbit hole looking up this Hebrew word for my inmost being. or my inward part.
Yeah.
Which is Wekirbi. Probably not that, but that's what I'm going to say that it is.
That was rough.
And when you click on it, it brings up literally like every single verse in the Bible where this particular Hebrew word shows up.
Okay.
And it shows up all over the place because it seems that really it just translates as kind of like inside, within, among, like all up in. I couldn't find any translations that pointed to it being about like genitalia or your womb or stuff like that. Other people maybe have different intel than I do, but that was what I
wonder
found.
if it's one of those things where early translators kind of struggled with how to put that, and they put it in a way that then later Bible, sort of critical commentary people were like, oh, this must mean private parts or your butthole or something. And,
Wow.
but really it wasn't at all. And that's just kind of.
Maybe. I mean, there are certain verses where it's translated as one's entrails as well.
So maybe it is your butt.
Better.
Could be your guts. Could be.
Guts and your butts.
But it seems like in
Hold on
other
to your butts.
instances, the context is also like it's used a lot in like among the people, within the people, So,
oh, really? Huh.
So it also carries that nuance as well.
Within the butts of the people.
God. Yep.
Wow.
All up in their butts.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
then I also looked into these tall and smooth people.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
tell us about
we wanna meet
smooth
them.
people. We're very fascinated by them.
So some people say, yes, it is Ethiopia.
Okay.
That's who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Some people say, no, it's the land of Cush, the Cushites, which is modern day Ethiopia as well.
Oh.
Some people are like, maybe it's Egypt. And then other people on the Stack Exchange are like, it could never be Egypt.
You're an idiot. I hate you.
You're an
you
idiot.
and your whole family are terrible.
Down.
Yeah.
Now, there was, a little bit of arguing on the Stack Exchange, which is to be expected. But the answer that everyone hated and got downvoted
Goodness.
was this person who was like, no, the tall, smooth people are specifically talking about these white South African Boer Christians that fled Catholic persecution to South Africa in 1662.
Okay.
And I was like, what is this about?
BS.
What is this person all about? And yet-
1662, what are you talking about? Okay.
Yes, and I looked into it, and and I'm sorry, all of you out there who know more about this. This is really just the very, very crude retelling of it. But yeah, basically there were these white Christians who emigrated to South Africa, and long story short, I'll just give you just a little character reference for them, is that the Brits also controlled South Africa for a little while in the 1800s, and in 1834 the Brits abolished slavery, and these white Boer Christians hated that because they were like, but white Christians are superior to everyone else, especially
Whatever.
indigenous races.
Right.
So that's kind of the bent. And I guess this person was maybe one of them, because he was like, yeah, it's definitely these people, and they're oppressed and hated by the world, and everyone downvoted it. So so it's not those people, according to the Stack Exchange.
I mean, I'm
as
glad
much as they would like to believe that was them.
What Stack Exchange is this? This hermeneutics?
Of course.
Okay.
Obviously.
I'm glad that the hermeneutic Stack Exchange at least is a little bit like, yeah, get out of here, white supremacists.
Basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good. It's good.
Gracious.
So that's what we got.
Wow.
Well,
What a time.
Well,
I
always-
really want to go eat raisins.
okay, do it.
Do we have
I
any
mean,
raisins?
always.
We do. We have raisins. We got dried cherries. We got dried dates. We got we can make so many fruitcakes
We have
right
a lot
now.
of dried fruits.
Yeah.
Can I just say, everyone go out and do this recipe. Take a date, put on some natural peanut butter, and then top it with a little bit of cacao nibs and some flake salt. The best dessert ever.
We could do that. We have dried dates and we have natural peanut butter. I don't think we have cacao nibs, but we do have flake salt.
Even just flake salt.
We have a little bit of Nutella.
Sure. I mean, that's not vegan,
That's the
but if you
non-vegan
want to do
version, but
non-vegan, then go nuts.
we could do it.
It is outrageous.
I think
I'm
my
gonna have
body would
one
probably
tonight.
appreciate real food at this point. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's
we're
a
getting into
real
drunk
dessert.
like food study.
Drunk
so.
dessert.
Drunk, we're
study.
hungry study. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, we're hungry. You all out there are probably hungry. Go have a snack. Go make a date. You know how I love a date. So we will see you all next week around the Bible studies, and follow us for more Psalm studies as well. We're very excited to bring you that segment. We'll see you next week. Bye.